Hey everyone, this is Mike Harbour, publisher of the Lead Up Podcast. Really excited to have a guest with me today, Pamela Potts. If you're watching on YouTube, you see Pam, you see an image of her book, Every Leader is a Coach. This is one of my favorite topics to discuss. We talk about all things leadership and how to be an elite leader. And elite leaders are great coaches, not managers. And I know Pam and I are going to have a great discussion about that today. As I always recommend, grab a pen and paper because I know Pam's going to share some valuable tools with you today that you're going to want to take note of and go apply immediately into your leadership as a coach. If you want to get more out of your teams, you have to become a more effective coach. And so we really want to move you in that direction today. Make sure you check out our show notes as well. Pam's got a free gift for you, an ebook. You can go get a copy of her book. I recommend grabbing the hard copy book as well, and I'll let Pam tell you where you can get all that at the end of our conversation today. Pam, welcome to the Lead Up Podcast. Excited to have you.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk about leadership. That's what we do on the Lead Up Podcast. But I love this topic of being a coach, right? I feel like I've been a coach my whole life, maybe not a great one, but I've gotten better over the years. I think I've thrived more in life when I've had great coaches in my life, right? And I've invested tens, if not hundreds of thousands in my own self in coaching, hiring coaches, still use coaches today, even though I am one. Uh, you know, Lots of training, lots of mentoring, those kind of things. What role has coaching played in your life?
Yes, I agree. I think there's something really beautiful when you can have somebody that's listening for what you're needing to say and pull up your potential. And that is really what coaching is all about. And I have a coach as well. Even though I coach, and I think it's important that people have that space that they can share, and it's you can really have a thinking partner along with you and have them hear something different than maybe what you're saying, or see something different in that conversation and ask the questions.
Yeah, I love that idea of thinking partner. I use that term a lot myself, just a strategic thinking partner.
Mhm.
We have our biases, our own personal biases that get in the way, right? Or just maybe our own perspective about things, and we're not able to see things from a different perspective. Um, I think one of the worst things we can do as a leader is listen to only one side of a conversation. I was just coaching someone this morning before we recorded this conversation, and
Mhm.
it was a leader who had a couple of employees that were not getting along, had a lot of conflict there, but she'd only heard from one side of the story. I'm like, well, what's the other side of the story there? And, because she'd already made some assumptions from only one side of the story. And so the coaching was, hey, make sure you have a conversation with the other person involved there. And then you can make a strategy to go forward from that place. And I think that's important to do, is to make sure we don't let our biases get in the way. That's where coaching can really help us do that. But in your opinion, what is something that every leader needs to learn to
Mm,
be a better coach, or about coaching, so they can be more effective in that in their life?
yeah, I really believe that you need to know yourself to lead. You have to really have deep self-awareness. My leadership philosophy is this: great leaders surround themselves with people that are strong in their areas of gap. Well, what does that mean? That means that you've got to know your gaps. You have to know what are the things that potentially can get in your way, along with the things that not only are just your strengths, but they're also things that really light you up. And we often don't understand what are those things specifically. And I like leaders, I always start there when I'm doing coaching. I always start there. How well do you know yourself? Do you know your own strengths and what brings you joy? And when we can know what I call our formula for flow, you can know what those things are that you're when you're doing your best work. And it feels like it's effortless. Those are the things that oftentimes we don't even recognize because it just is not a big deal for us,
Mhm.
but can be our superpower. So let's define our superpower first, and then look at the things that you don't enjoy to do. I really kind of get in that place of drainers, and place that when you are at your best. And so what's your formula for flow and what's your formula for frustration?
That's
And
really
we can start to determine like what's our self-awareness, and then also what are the gaps and who do I need to surround myself with?
yeah, that's really good. I often say that, what you just described, what Pam just described, and look, listeners, if you've been listening for a long time on the Lead Up podcast, you know this. We talk about the things that the world says are soft skills are really critical skills or essential skills for leadership. And I've often said that what Pam just shared, self-awareness is number one when it comes to essential skills as a leader. It's a
Absolutely.
skill or a competency that we have to develop. It's no longer, it's not a soft skill, and it's no longer optional as well. And so I love that you brought that up, Pam. But where does one go to begin to discover some of that self knowledge? How do they get there? What do they do with it once they find out? What if they don't like what they find out about themselves?
Yes, that's an interesting question, isn't it? When you think about what do you do if you don't like how you are, what your strengths are, you're kind of sometimes I think we hide behind the things that people expect from us. And when we do that and we don't really have clarity on who we are, then that causes a lot of tension in our own selves, a lot of stress. We hold that and that becomes very stressful. We don't need that. So here's what I like to do. I like people to take a sheet of paper and because we oftentimes know our skills. So we get our jobs, we go to college because we have skills in a certain area. We get jobs because we're good at things.
Mm.
But what is actually the other side of it that brings us joy and lights us up? And we have been taught so much, keep your emotions at the door. Don't come into the room with your emotions, don't let that show. And I I have a really hard time with that because if we only go after our skills and what we're good at, then we lose a whole part of us that really the joy of the work. And I think that's an important piece of the joy that we can bring to our work. So with this, start a piece of paper, have it line down the middle and say what brings you joy and what energizes you, and then what do you not like to do and what drains you. And literally just kind of document it. Don't judge it. So I always do this too. Hold your hand up and say, promise me that you will stay curious and not judgmental.
Mm.
If we judge what we see, that's kind of to your point of what do we don't like? What if we don't like what we see? If
Mm.
we judge ourselves first, then it's going to be really easy for us to be judgmental, but with others as well. But stay curious. You can't be curious and judgmental at the same time. So stay curious, make your list, and just document things at the end of the day, or maybe a couple of times a day, just like, oh, I was doing this and I felt like that energy. Um, and what specifically can you do that? And try and really document that part of it first of all, and then reflect on it and really think about like what are the skills and the energy that you bring so that it feels very effortless in your work. I love assessments as well. You're talking about like how do you find that out? I love assessments, but oftentimes assessments is something that we read and then we go, oh, well, that was great. And we put it aside, but we don't activate it
Mm.
because we don't oftentimes have coaches to help us.
Yeah.
And that's where the coaching part of it is an important piece as well.
Yeah, I think that's vitally important. I love, you know, I love the idea of being curious. I talk about that a lot, just curiosity-based leadership, right? There's two things that Pam shared with us today that I want to make sure our listeners hear. I'm going to
Mhm.
talk about it because I can't remember exactly how you presented. I think don't be judgmental, right? Is what you were saying. Don't judge yourself. I'm often coaching leaders to learn to become a self coach, not a self critic. The reality is, Pam, with myself, I'll speak for myself, but also a lot of people I work. We self criticize, right? We look at, yeah, gosh, I wish I was so much better at that. Oh, I could never be that good. Oh, I wish I could just communicate the way great leaders communicate. And so we go into this place of self criticism versus self coaching. Like, wow, what do I need to learn to become a better communicator? What do I need to develop to learn to do that more effectively. And I love your approach that when you talk about assessments. I too use assessments.
Mhm.
And a lot of times that's the first place people go. They go into self-judgment or self-criticism
Right.
with that assessment. And then they put it on the shelf and it becomes shelf knowledge instead of self-knowledge. And that's where a great coach can come along and say, okay, Pam, let's look into this. What does that mean? How does that show up in your leadership? How would you like for it to show up differently? What are some skills we can learn? What are some things we can try a little bit differently? And I think too often people, leaders especially, what they've done has worked for them to get them to the place of leadership, but maybe it's become ineffective, right?
Right.
And I often use myself as an example. I tell people I have two great skills in leadership, telling people what to do and how to do it. But that's not effective leadership, right? And so I had to begin to learn, okay, how can I inspire people to go the direction we need them to go versus telling them what to do, uh, and versus telling them how to do it because I want to develop them and grow so that they can do it independently. What are some challenges you found with leaders when they start this self-awareness journey? And I'm a believer that to be a better coach, we do have to start that journey to self-awareness. But what are some challenges you have found with leaders when they start that journey that they just say, "Well, I'm not sure I want to go any further. I don't really want to talk about that," or "I don't really think that's an issue for me because I'm doing okay in my leadership role."
Right. I think one of the problems that happens when we do, whether it's assessments or whether we're doing self-awareness and we feel kind of this judgment piece of it, is that we think we have to fix everything.
Mm,
We're fixers. Leaders oftentimes are fixers. Leaders oftentimes get their jobs. Most people are promoted to a leadership role because they're really good as an individual performer. No, that's the skill set of being an individual performer, and the skill set of a leader is different. And 83% of people are not taught to be leaders. They're never formally trained. So
mm,
you have to catch it. So what we often do, because we're in this world of seeing so much around us and comparing ourselves, I ask people, don't compare because comparison is a thief.
mm,
And I am never going to be like you. I'm not going to be like somebody else. I can't be. I can try really hard to be like you, but I can't. So is we have to just realize that who we are, we don't want to have excuses for our weaknesses, but and we can't let them hold us back. But we don't want to. So here's what I like to think about. If we understand who we are and really can lean into that, that is such a beautiful gift because we become a really unique leader in that respect. We use our gifts in that way. And then we help people find their gifts that are on our team around us. That's such an important piece of it. But if we look at like an assessment or we look at even coaching conversations and we feel like, oh, well, that's a weakness. Well, I got to work on that.
mm.
We're working on things that are only helping us to get average.
Yeah,
We can work on our things and help continue to develop our strengths and what brings us joy and energy. That's when we can really get high performing.
yeah, that's good. What what um what are some skills? So we've talked about like this step to moving toward being a better coach is self-awareness. What are some other skills that are competencies that a leader needs to develop and grow to be a better coach mm, beyond, the self-awareness piece?
Right. I actually have 10 best practices of a leader coach. So the first one is self awareness. And that's an important one to start with because then when we can see what we have learned about ourselves, then we can start recognizing it in other people as well. And
Mhm.
that's one of the cues or the big things is actually looking for what's working in people. This is the other thing that I think we often think as leaders is we've got to help people. And our helping is looking for what they're doing wrong and helping them fix it.
Mhm.
What happens if we look for what they're doing really, really well and then recognize that in them?
Yeah.
And yes, again, we're going to have to work on the things that aren't working. But actually, Gallup did a study and it says that when people can use their strengths at work, they're 6 times more effective.
Mm,
And if you can't define what your strengths are, then how can you know that you're using them?
yeah.
I just like clarity around that, but that's the first thing is that self-awareness. Then and that goes along with what I call emotional energy management as well. So that's the second thing is that emotional energy management. Know what are the things that light you up and what are the things that you need to be aware that drains you. That kind of emotional side of it. Um, and the other part, I mean, there's a lot of things that we can go into, but I think the two other things that are super important as a leader is that we replace questions with making decisions.
Mm,
So oftentimes people will come to us, our team will come to us and ask us questions. When you're a leader coach, we can ask a question instead of solving the problem. And that is one of the biggest things. If we ask those kind of questions and really truly listen and then ask more questions and then let them discover the way that's the best answer. We're able to guide them with the questions that we ask. We can ask those kind of empowering questions. But that's the biggest shift is the replacement of solving the problem for them and then and asking questions instead.
yeah. That's a huge, I love that you got to that one because it's
Mhm.
probably the hardest thing to learn as a leader, right? Because what you hit on is we get promoted into leadership roles because of how good we are at fixing things and solving problems. But if we solve all the problems as a leader, we become we're not really a leader at that point. We just become a problem solver, right? And then our people never really learn independence, critical thinking, or solving problems on their own, which every leader I work with, that's what they want. They want an independent person to critically think and solve their own problems. And I'm like, well, how many questions are you asking when they bring you a problem, right? So, I've interviewed a couple people on my podcast in the past. A guy named Bob Tiede, Lead with Questions. So if you're listening here, Bob's book, Lead with Questions, is a fantastic book. John Maxwell has written a book called Great Leaders or Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. But learning the skill of asking questions as a leader, again, one of those essential skills that we talked about that Pam's brought into this conversation. Not easy to develop either because, we just want to fix things and get them off of our plate and move on. But at the end of the day, we have a bunch of people sitting around waiting on us to fix things if that happens. Pam, I want to shift gears a little bit just in the essence of time because one of the vital topics in today's leadership culture or just organizational culture is just overwhelm, burnout, well-being, whatever label you want to put on it, right? How how do leaders need to approach that subject, that topic from a coach perspective and making sure that yes, we're still getting productivity out of our people, but not leaving them in this place where they feel burn out, burn up, overwhelmed, ready to quit.
What you said earlier is kind of an interesting tie into the how I would answer this question, because I think there's something about it that we hold as leaders too much oftentimes. We think that we have to be that chief, what I call the chief problem solver.
Yeah.
We think that that's our role. And actually, it's not. We don't understand that leadership is not solving everybody's problems, to your point. Leadership is empowering others, and as we can learn how to ask questions, then again, that's the empowerment. But I think the part of it that we just have leadership defined wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So, John Maxwell calls leader an influencer. Nothing,
Mm-hmm.
nothing more, nothing less. Well, what are you influencing? If we're influencing, he didn't say it was a problem solver. It is influencer. So as we can be in that place where we can ask better questions, then we're not having to feel like we have to hold it all, which is the biggest challenge. We hold it, we still feel stressed because we have so many things that are going on in so many conversations. Well, first of all, I'm going to tie back again to that question at the very beginning. Do you know yourself? Do you know what are the best kind of things that you can solve? And what are the things that are in the meetings even that are yours to be in, right? Because we overwhelm ourselves with being busy.
Yeah.
It's almost like a badge of honor that
Mm-hmm.
and I like space because we don't have thinking. We don't have enough space to actually have thinking time. So we fill our calendar, and we feel overwhelmed, and we haven't empowered people, and we're holding a lot, and we're trying to solve every problem. And it all seems overwhelming when I'm even saying it. Doesn't it just feel like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I feel so heavy?
Mm.
And how can we lighten leadership? I think we lighten leadership by lightening the load.
Mm-hmm.
And we lighten the load by empowering others. And we empower others by asking questions and developing them.
So let's talk about that for just a minute.
Mhm.
Tied back to the overwhelm, burnout.
Yeah.
We're talking about lightening our own load as a leader, but then we may have people who are overwhelmed, burnout, maybe feel like they have too much to do underneath us. So we're talking about lightening our load and empowering others to do it. Are we overwhelming them more? Are we giving them too much to do? Talk about that dynamic a little bit.
That seems like to me that there's not clarity and when they are at their best either.
Mm,
So we spend so much time doing work that's draining.
mm,
So think about the time that you had to power through something. You knew you had to get something done and it's not your best. So let me give you an example. When I was writing the book, I um I love getting my thoughts out, but I'm a verbal processor and I am an extrovert. So for me to sit alone and write for the number of hours that I had to write was just a bit overwhelming, honestly. And so what I really had to do, I'm sitting at my desk right now. I literally envisioned somebody sitting next to me and I was talking to them. So I was able to power through because I put it in a place where when I know I'm at my best and I'm working with other people and I'm and coach them and mentor them, that's when I feel like I'm at my best. So I had to envision that. That is not sustainable work for me. I would not love to write a book every day. Like once I'm done with that, I mean, I've got a couple more that I'm working on right now, but it's
John
not.
Maxwell's written about 100, Pam. How do we catch up to him, right?
I know, I know. I mean, he is a power team. I mean, and think of, we know that he's got people around him that help him, with all of those things. But if we think back of the work that we have to do we really, is that at our best? Is that something that we should be doing? We think that draining work is just stuff that we don't even think that it's draining. We just think that's stuff that I just have to power through. But if you're putting it off and you're procrastinating on it, um, I stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning the other day, finishing all of the details of my taxes to get to my accountant for my tax extension get done in 2 weeks. It's not my favorite thing to do.
Mhm.
I don't like spreadsheets and numbers to that degree, but I have to do it. It's my responsibility. We all have to follow taxes.
Yeah.
So is it something that I have to hold and I have to do, or it's something that I can give to somebody else?
Yeah.
We can evaluate those kinds of things in the work that we do. It doesn't have to be that intense as writing a book and doing my taxes. But I think there is work that we're holding on to. And should we really be spending all of our time and energy doing that? And if we understand when we're at our best and what drains us, at least this gives us some clarity on how to even start doing this work of really figuring out what is ours to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I want to stick with that topic for a minute. What is ours to do? I wrote an article recently, do, delegate, or delete. Just a simple formula. As a leader, and just tying into what Pam says, what's mine to do as a leader? Like, what are the things on my to-do list that only I can do, that I have to hold, that I have responsibility for? What's on my to-do list that I just need to dump? Like, is a time killer, is a wasted, it's just wasted space. Maybe I do it because I feel good, but it's not really, required to do. That's a little bit harder to manage. But then the third piece is that delegate piece. And I'm not really a fan of the term delegate, but I use it because it's what most people know. I'm more of a fan of the term equip, Pam. And that's what Pam's talking about here is as a leader, clarity is your friend. It's a requirement to lead well, to coach well, and equipping is a way to create clarity for those that you're empowering. As Pam's talking about empowering, equipping is a formula. I teach a 5-step equipping formula, but equipping is really how do we teach someone how to do what we're delegating to them and then empower them with the responsibility to do that, right? So I think it's a formula that goes there. And leaders, what Pam's teaching here is if you do that right, you get people into their strength zone, you give them clarity, you give them freedom to go do it, and it reduces this overwhelm and burnout that maybe they feel because when delegating, we're just, hey Pam, I need you to do this for me, and I run away, and I've just created more overwhelm for you because you don't know what I even need, how I want it done, what the time frame is. Again, that's poor leadership, poor coaching. Being a great coach is equipping others to do those things as well. So I think go ahead and speak into that a little bit more, Pam, if you will.
Yeah, what's coming up for me when you say that is that if we're having to always take something and teach people how to do it, that means that we know how to do it well.
Mhm.
That means that as a leader, is that what I'm thinking that I have to do? Is like do everybody's job well so I can teach them? But what happens if we say, okay, this is our end result? We have clarity of what we need that end result to be.
Yeah, very good.
Right? And then we define it and we know the time frame. We bring that clarity to that specific thing.
Mm.
Then we let them figure out how to do it. What happens if I mean we can train people and guide them, but does that mean that we have to do the way that they would do it? If they try and do it the way that I would do it, it would be different than the way that they would do it
Yeah.
because their efficiency is different than my efficiency.
Mhm.
How I see it. I used to be in software development, and when I would work with people and I would bring in a project and somebody would have to code it. I could talk to 5 different people and they would take it a different way.
Yeah.
I gave them what we need at the end, right? And everybody's gonna have a different way of solving that problem. Any one of those 5 ways wrong? Probably not.
Mhm.
But honestly, I didn't know how to code all of that, so I just had to, like, trust the process
Mhm.
because I got the result that I needed. So can we trust that process and lean into the result rather than leaning in to how they're doing every little step?
Yeah, it's a great example. I love that because I often sometimes find myself getting impatient when I'm standing over somebody's shoulder, watching them access something that I could have accessed a different way, right? And they got to the same place, but I'm like, why'd you do that? You know, here's the easy way. I want to take over and tell them my way, but again, you're so right, especially from some tech stuff. The there's multiple paths to get to the end result. And clarity on that end result is what's more important than how we get there, certainly. Um, talk about you and I are of the same generation, um, Gen Xers. We grew up in a in a leadership style and approach. You know, I often say this when I'm in training and speaking. You know, my reward from my employer was show up, do your job, and we'll pay you at the end of 2 weeks. And that was as much leadership as you got. And if you did something wrong, maybe they screamed and yelled at you a little bit, or told you did it wrong. But this the generations behind us require more, right? They require a better approach to leadership. So talk about this leader coach approach versus the traditional leadership approaches from the past, why it's vital today, and how it's going to help leaders create cultures of high performance in the future if they get this right.
There's so much information that's instantly available to us,
Mm.
and we can ask ChatGPT or another AI. We can go in and Google it, and we can there's lots of ways that can get information. So it's not the information or the how-to oftentimes that is the thing that's not available. What is not available without technology is the relationships. and the guidance and the empowerment
Mm.
and the training in a way that sees them. I know our younger generation wants to be empowered. They want to be guided. They want to be mentored. They don't want us to tell them how to do everything.
Mhm.
And I think that's the part of, again, how are we defining our leadership? If we're defining leadership as my need to manage everything,
Mm.
manage all those tasks, manage people, making sure that they're doing their job, and that gets into kind of that micromanagement thing. That's what people don't want. I don't want that. I mean, as much as the younger generation does, I don't want somebody looking over my shoulder all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
But I want people to be able to coach me, right? I want to have a different perspective. I want their wisdom. So how can we shift our, again, what is the definition of what you see yourself as a leader?
Mm.
And if we can step that up and up think, change our way, change our definition and bring more clarity to the leadership. I love what you're doing around this because you're bringing a lot of clarity on what leadership is. But what we know it's not managing people.
Yeah.
And we need to be thinking about how are we going to then affect the people that are in that younger generation that want that mentoring, want to be coached. It's really vital. I really believe that coaching for leaders is what has to happen for the next generation to be led well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I think, again, we come back to this topic of clarity. In my practice, I teach a lot of, I wrote a book, Quit Losing Talent. I teach leaders how to interview and select talent as part of that framework for, talent attraction, development, retention. And one of the things I teach, Pam, is in the interview process, I teach leaders to describe their leadership style to the interviewee. Like, okay, Pam, you and I are interviewing. You're potentially going to come work for me. Here's what you need to know about me and how I'm going to lead, how I'm going to coach. But then I think from there, like, because I want to create this clarity. Number one, I want you to know like my style and how I'm going to show up and what I expect of you before you ever come to work for me. That way you say, yeah, I can work for that guy or no, I can't. And so I'd rather you select in or select out before I make you an offer and then you show up and you don't really like my style, right? But I also think it's important for me to also then ask, how do you like to be led, Pam? How do you like to be coached? How do you like to be approached? You like me to tell you everything to do, stay on top of you, or do you need me to just give you, an endpoint and then leave you alone and you get there? And so I think it's important. One of the great questions, a couple great questions as leader, as coach is, how do you like to be led? How do I need to manage you? What's the best approach? And then what happens if you start falling behind on some expectations that we have? How should I approach that? Again, because I want to know from you how to lead you, how to coach you so that I can adjust my style, right? I think that's, when you talk about self-awareness, going back to self-awareness, elite leaders, I talk about elite leadership. That's one of our programs. Elite leaders know how to adjust based on the individual in front of them. And I think, when I think about traditional approach, the way you and I grew up versus the approaches that are needed today, traditional approach is one size fits all. I'm going to lead every person exactly the same. But today, and what Pam's teaching us is every individual's different. Know their strengths, know what lights them up, know what brings them energy and joy in the workplace, know how they like to be led. The only way you can know that, Pam, is by asking questions, right? Getting to know them. Do you want to speak into that a little bit?
Yeah. I I think there's something really interesting about how we talk to people
Mm.
and what is the level of how they actually hear you.
Mm.
So it's so easy to shut people off and turn them off if you don't know them. So
Yeah.
to give an example, if I'm a detail person and the person that I'm talking to is not super detailed, I'm going to tell you every little thing about that in that thing. It might be whether it's a spreadsheet or a project, I'm going to go into all these details. If
Mm.
that person is a strategic thinker, which is I'm actually the opposite. I'm more the strategic thinker and I've had
Mm.
big detail person. talk to me and like, "Oh, okay, got it." And I'm already shut. It's easy to shut off when they're going into details because I don't need that much for my to be happy, to understand the project. So if they it's the same responsibility of I have if I'm more of a strategic thinker and they need details, I'm not giving them enough information and they feel lost.
Mhm.
Well, I'm not being clear and I'm like, I was crystal clear, you know? So we have to be able to communicate in a way that we're heard
Yeah.
and that they hear us.
Yeah.
And it's not just about what we're saying, it's about do they actually hear us and understand? Are we talking them in a way that they can move forward?
Mm,
So asking, maybe we share something and then it's simple like, do you have any questions for me? What
mm.
clarity do you need to be able to go and do the next steps?
Yeah. I love that. Teach that a lot. It's
Mhm.
another self-awareness thing, right? Knowing how we communicate versus how others receive what we communicate.
Yes.
Usually when I'm using DISC in, the organizations that I work with, we teach that, right? I mean, Pam, you're going to receive information differently than me, and I need to tune into your frequency. I often use, you and I are kind of from the Midwest or South. We live in rural areas. I use the example of driving. You got a great radio station you're tuned into. You all of a sudden get out of the range of the antenna, so you start getting static in the frequency, right? The signal, and it's the same thing. If I'm talking to you, and your frequency is not the same as mine, you're not going to hear it. It's like Charlie Brown, like waka waka waka, right? We don't really hear what the other person's saying, and I so relate to that because I'm kind of a bottom line guy. Just give me the bottom line and then let me ask questions. But I have people around me sometimes they want to come in and like tell me the whole story, and I'm like, hey, time out. Give me the bottom line. Let me ask questions. How you got there? Don't give me the whole story. But I think that's a vital. What you're talking about is critical, right? For leader as coach, knowing that about ourselves, but also knowing that about our team because they will respond better to us when we connect to them based on how they receive information versus how we send information. So it's a fantastic teaching. What are some tools that you coach leaders to use to create that awareness and understanding?
So I actually have two different assessments that I really like. One is called the Purpose Factor, which is well, not necessarily a brand new, but it was just actually endorsed by John Maxwell, by the way. And I think goes not only deeper into just what your skills and energies, but it also talks about purpose. So I think that's an important thing. And that's a whole nother probably conversation that we could have around purpose because it's
Mm,
so important that we know we have do purposeful work and we do that work that matches our values and their values as well.
yeah.
And then the other assessment that I really like is called strength scope. And that gets into the conversation about what energizes you and drains you and gets down to details. So I can this whole detail orientation thing that I was talking about, like, are you energized by it or drained by it? There's no judgment. It's just how you are. We don't need to have, we don't need to judge ourselves as we were talking about. But I think it's oftentimes assessments do go into this conversation where then now we think we should work on these things. And I just want to really caution people around that the assessment can be used so well to help us develop and understand how we show up. And what should we work on? This is the question. Maybe we self-coach. I like what you're talking about. I completely agree that we need to self-coach. And what can we do with this information? How can I be better here with this? What are my blind spots potentially? Um, what are the things that I should work on? I can't let my weaknesses or the things that are draining me hold me back, but can make sure that I also lean into the things that really do bring me joy, and again, that it gets a self-awareness thing. But I think the part of it that, um, it always starts with questions. It's always starts with curiosity. And here's what I talk about tools. My biggest tool is this one question. That's interesting. Tell me more.
Love that. Yeah.
It's simple because it pauses us. We know that our brains are wired to go down neurological pathways that we've made. So we have all of these things that how we've done our work is all, again, out of routine. A lot of right now out of routine. Our neurological pathways are just there. Then if we need to stop it and try and do things in a different way, that's when change management or change is so hard because we're trying to change the way our brain is working.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can just pause for a second and go, that's interesting. If our first reaction is not doing something or answering something, if we can say, that's interesting, tell me more. I ask myself that question a lot, Mike. Like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why I thought that way. Or that's interesting. I wonder why I did that. Like, this is my self-talk. Instead of judging myself, I go to, that's interesting. I'm staying curious. And if I could give one thing to everybody that's listening today, is that one question before you respond to something or before you react in a way that maybe you don't want to react. I mean, how do we change that? Pause. That's interesting.
That's so good, Pam. I love that because that's, again, starting with self. I think we as leaders need to do more of that, starting with self, growing ourselves, becoming better ourselves before we can teach others. We could probably talk another couple hours and not get everywhere we want to get, Pam, but time flies when you're having a great discussion. But lead up listeners, I want to challenge you to go out and get a copy of Pam's book. Look like what we didn't talk about today, or how do we build trust as leaders? Coaching, trust is at an all-time low in the world, but coaching is a way to build trust with your team, to spend more time getting to know them so that you can lead them effectively. What we didn't talk about from Pam's book today are, 6 simple practices to build trust and effectiveness in your one-on-one meetings. We didn't get to all the 7-step leader coach model. She shared a few of those, but we need to dig deeper. So you need to get a copy of this book, and learn more. Also, most of you, if you're listening, you have teams. And so Pam talks about a team coaching model that we didn't even get to today. So I highly recommend that you go get the book. And Pam's final chapter in the book, chapter 10, is be in relentless pursuit of your team's potential. I often sign my emails, be relentless. Pam, I think that's what it takes to be an elite leader, is just to be relentless, be in relentless pursuit of your own excellence, but be in relentless pursuit of those that you lead in their excellence as well. The reality is most people, they want to be more, they want to do more, they want to have more, but they don't have this self-belief, the self-worth, and this is where elite leadership comes in, is to help them really fulfill that full potential that they were designed and wired by their creator to have. And so I think Pam's got some great tips and tools and ideas in her book. Pam, where do we find out more about you? Where do we get your book? Where do we get a copy of your book on my website or on our podcast as well?
Thank you. I do love the alignment, and I appreciate all the great work that you are doing. If people want to know more about what I'm doing and look at some more of the tools that I have, everyleadersacoach.com is my website for the book. So feel free to go to that to get the book, and I have an ebook and some resources there. And then my website is called leadercoachapproach.com. So please, either one of those are easy to find me.
All right. Everyleaderisacoach.com. We'll put that link in the show notes. Or if you're listening or you're watching on YouTube, just check the show notes out, and that link will be there. And Leader Coach Approach is Pam's website for her business. If you're in need of a coach, you're looking for a coach, you want to learn more about Pam and her coach approach, find her at leadercoachapproach.com. Also, that link will be in the the show notes as well. Pam, time went by fast, but it was a lovely discussion. I love talking about leadership and coaching. I think we all have to get better. I learned some things from you today I got to get better at myself. But thank you so much for being a great guest on the Lead Up Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.